All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. The defendant is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Bailey. People are represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, Ms. Lewis. The jury is not present. Counsel, is there anything we need to take up before we invite the jurors to join us?
Yes, there is, Your Honor. Last night on the news, Mr. Bailey was seen referring to a female, and was heard referring to a female defense witness who he claimed was unknown to the prosecution and would be a surprise to the prosecution. And it sounded clear that this is somebody that the defense intends to call at trial. By Mr. Bailey's own words, this is someone they have failed to reveal in reciprocal discovery. So this seems an appropriate time, since if a decision had not been made by last night, it certainly was made by the time Mr. Bailey announced it to the world through the press that they have an additional witness they intend to call. So I would ask the court to order the defense to disclose the name and address and the statement of this witness, whoever it is.
All right, Mr. Bailey, do you wish to respond to that?
It's a matter for a proffer. The witness is not on the list until this witness denies the incident. If he denies the incident, there won't be any need to call any witness, but the proffer that I am submitting to the court pursuant to our last visit to this subject contains the information, and I think when Your Honor looks at it and looks at another document, you'll be quite satisfied that the rules have been complied with. I'll be glad to submit that and let Your Honor look at it now, and we can confer in camera. I'll explain to you what I mean, but...
All right.
Oh, Your Honor, the time is now.
Your Honor, this is... I'm just on the discovery. I'll speak for us on this. Well, the cat is out of the bag again. I mean, I don't think Mr. Bailey can announce to the world last night, which includes announcing to the prosecution about this witness, and then seek to insulate the witness from discovery by saying, well, we'll let the court handle it.
Ms. Lewis, what was the specific comment that was made? I did not see that. I'm not aware of anything that was said regarding this.
Unfortunately, I didn't actually see it myself, but I have a transcript of it, which I'm told is accurate.
Actually, that's a one.
Quoting Mr. Bailey, saying Mr. Bailey, claims there is another woman Furhman did not know was present when he was together with Bell on a separate occasion. Bailey would not elaborate on the mystery witness, and that was about all on this one. I think he was... I know he was more specific in terms of the gender because he described it as a female witness during the press conference that he gave after court yesterday.
All right, Mr. Bailey, you're willing to make a disclosure to the court, 1054.7 in camera? All right, then I'll ask, I anticipate that we will be on direct examination for the entire morning session with Detective Furhman and Ms. Clark, so I don't think that we'll be getting anywhere close to cross-examination at this point, but I'll take the opportunity to look at it when we take our first break.
Your Honor, it is, if it's discoverable now, we want it now. It may affect our direct examination of Detective Furhman. I mean, it could well have an impact or maybe not, but that's something that we need to know, and since it is discoverable now, it appears to be a slender envelope. Doesn't it look like it would take the court considerable time to look at? We'd request the court to conduct an in-camera now. Please.
All right, I'm going to decline that invitation at this point. I'll do it at the first break. All right, Mr. Bailey, if you'll file that then with Mrs. Robertson, and I'll review it when we take our first break. Yes, please. All right, secondly, counsel, I have received a fax from Patricia Berman regarding the recurring ice cream issue. I've have staff give counsel a copy of both of those. I have also received additional testing results from Cellmark and from LAPD regarding fingerprint and other analysis that were done. And Ms. Carswell is making photocopies of those right now, and you'll be provided with those at the first break. All right, anything else? All right, Deputy McNair, let's have the jurors, please. Ladies and gentlemen. All right, Detective Furhman, would you please resume the witness stand? All right, good morning, Detective Furhman.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Detective, you're reminded you're still under oath. Ms. Clark, you may resume with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. When we left off, Detective Furhman, you indicated that you were writing notes on the living room couch inside the condominium at 875 South Bundy. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
All right, now, before you entered the house at that point to sit down and write your notes, was there any point when you were at the crime scene up until that time that you were alone?
No.
Who were you with from the moment you arrived at 875 South Bundy in the company of Detective Phillips in his car? Who were you with?
Detective Phillips.
And when you arrived at 875 South Bundy, who did you meet with?
Sergeant Rossi and Officer Risky.
Okay. And then who was it that took you up through the shrubbery up the front walkway to look at the crime scene?
Officer Risky?
And was Detective Phillips with you as well?
Yes.
And after that point, you went, I believe you indicated, you went around through the back and entered through the garage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you did so, who was with you?
Officer Risky and Detective Phillips.
And as you walked through the house and stepped out on the landing to look at the crime scene, who was with you?
Officer Risky and Detective Phillips.
And when you stepped out the front door and walked down the walkway following the bloody shoe prints out to the alley, who was with you?
Officer Risky and Detective Phillips.
And when you exited the rear gate and went out to the driveway and observed the blood drop and the change, who was with you?
Officer Risky and Detective Phillips.
When you went back to re-enter the location, to re-enter the condominium, where did Officer Risky and Detective Phillips go?
I believe they walked back to Dorothy.
Okay. At that point, how long had you been at the crime scene?
Maybe 15 minutes at the most.
Okay. And what were you wearing at that time?
A blue blazer, tan slacks, white shirt.
Okay. You then went into the condominium, is that correct?
Yes.
And where did you go to?
The couch directly to the right or the south of the front door.
Okay. And when you sat on that couch, was the front door open, sir?
Yes.
Was there anyone outside the location on the landing at that time?
No.
When you sat down to begin writing your notes, was that the first time that you were separated from Detective Phillips and Officer Risky?
Yes.
And at that point, had the glove and the cap underneath the bush already been pointed out to you from the front gate area and then again from the landing area outside the front door by Officer Risky?
Yes.
Now, you sat down to write your notes, and we were going through those notes yesterday. So we finished page 1. We haven't quite finished page 1, actually. Let's go back to
I think we finished item 3.
item 4. I'm sorry?
I think we finished item 3,
We finished item 3. Thank you, Rob.
I think.
You're right.
One, please.
Now, these notes, sir, can you tell us, were these meant to be your final and definitive notes as the investigating officer at that time for this crime scene?
No, this is the first round of notes.
Okay. When you say the first round of notes, sir, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Most of these notes were what Officer Risky was pointing out to Detective Phillips and myself, and what I observed.
What did you intend to do? So were these notes rough notes?
Yes.
What did you intend to do with these notes later on?
I used them to go back to these areas and use them as a guide in what to go back to and prioritize them.
I think you indicated earlier that the item numbers that you have on this list, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., that each number would be referenced later on in a more full, detailed report?
Yes.
And how would you do that? What would you do?
Well, taking notes at the scene, if it would have gone beyond this point, I would have, as an example, item 3, I would have put at the top of the page. I would have wrote any notes I wanted about item 3. If it was 3 pages, it would have been page 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom. And then I'd know that that was that observation or that point that Officer Risky pointed out. And I would be able to organize it somewhat like that.
Okay.
All right, for the record, Ms. Clark, we're referring to page 1 items 3 and 4 of People's Exhibit 104.
Correct. But your observations, sir, concerning what you, well, your description of what you would do with these items, does that pertain to all of the items on these notes that we're going through now?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that you briefly went upstairs and saw the bedrooms yesterday. You recall that?
Yes.
Did you see rooms that appeared to be children's rooms?
I did, but I don't recall exactly anything about them.
Did you know what, did you ask what happened to the children or whether they were, or did you know already?
Officer Risky informed me that there were 2 children in the house and they'd been taken to West LA Station.
So by the time you got there, you knew they were already taken care of?
Yes.
And did he tell you that as soon as you arrived at the scene?
I believe it was the initial explanation of what had transpired before we walked in the scene, yes.
Now, was Officer Risky the only one that pointed things out to you, sir, or were there other officers that pointed things out when you arrived at 875 South Bundy?
Just Officer Risky.
So you sat down and you began to write these notes on the living room couch. And I think we left off at 4 and you were discussing with us, sir, the fact that you saw no evidence of ransacking. And was that important to you?
Yes.
And tell us why.
Initially, I was concerned that possibly the house was part of the crime scene, and I was looking for evidence that would give me any indication of that.
And did you find any?
No, not in the first walkthrough.
Now, you found the stereo was playing and the lights were low, the candles were lit in the living room and in the upstairs bathroom,
Yes.
according to your notes. Did that indicate anything to you in terms of information useful to the investigation of these murders?
At that point, I would conclude that someone was home at that time, and someone was preparing, possibly, to take a bath. Someone was listening to music.
Next, please. This is the second page of your notes, sir. Do you recognize these notes?
Yes, the numbers are cut off. There.
There we go.
There. Good.
Item number 5. You indicate there's a handwritten note on the upstairs coffee table, which you quote as Cara with a phone number, California Pizza Kitchen.
Yes.
And where did you see that?
There's a upstairs, I think it would be described best as a family room, and I believe it was above the garage. I think you stepped up from the kitchen area or that hall area, and it was on the coffee table.
And the pizza menu by the female victim's left leg. Do you recall, can you tell us, did you bend down and actually read that it was a pizza menu, or was that at first glance description?
I think that was, at first glance, that's what I thought it was.
Okay.
Mrs. Robertson?
Your Honor, this is People's 80,
People's 80.
and we've got the feed for this photo.
I have.
2, please.
All right, showing you People's 80, sir. Can you tell us if you recognize what's shown in this photograph?
I haven't seen this since June 13th, but that looks about the same location. I can't tell what the writing is, but that appears to be what I saw at her feet, yes.
Okay. And does that appear to be what you were attempting to describe in item 5 of your notes?
Yes.
Okay, item 6, that was the ice cream that you were describing.
Yes,
You indicate in this that it says not yet melted when Officer Risky entered the residence.
yes,
Okay. And is that something that was told to you by Officer Risky?
yes.
And what was it that he indicated to you with respect to the condition of that ice cream that you observed?
And the best I can remember, it was just that it appeared that it hadn't melted yet, or it was in the process, but
Okay.
I don't know how he would have concluded that.
Now, when you saw the ice cream 2 hours later, you earlier indicated to us that it still looked lumpy to you.
Yes,
Okay. And what color did it appear to be?
tan, light brown.
Did that ice cream have any particular evidentiary significance to you?
Only in that the house was so neat, and it seemed to be the only item of food or anything that I would see looked out of place, being an intruder into the house. In other words, never being in the house before.
You being the intruder, that is?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, item 7, children 2 sleeping in upstairs bedroom, awoken by officers. Was that information given to you by another officer?
Yes,
By,
Officer Risky.
okay, item number 8. Was that something you observed, sir?
No, Officer Risky told me that.
Were you able to observe it from your vantage point, either at the front gate of the walkway when you were with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips, or from the landing outside the front door where you observed the crime scene in the company of Officer Risky and Detective Phillips?
No, I did not observe that from that location.
So that was information given to you by Officer Risky.
Yes,
Item number 9. Those were the bloody shoe prints that you described to us earlier.
yes,
Was that something that you personally observed?
yes,
And was it also pointed out to you by Officer Risky?
yes, it was.
Item number 10. Can you tell us what you're referring to in that item?
Yes, a canvas is the term we use to describe officers going to neighbors' location around the crime scene to see if they heard or saw anything anytime during the evening that could have led up to the time of the murders.
And as of the time you were writing those notes, did you have any information from any of the neighbors nearby about what may have transpired that night?
None.
So you had no idea then at that point whether there were any eyewitnesses or ear witnesses, people who have heard things or seen things that may be relevant to the murders?
I had no knowledge of any, no.
All right, item number 11, a Kato dog found running loose, belongs to victim female. Can you tell us what you're referring to there and who gave you that information?
That was from Officer Risky.
And, okay, that was something that he informed you of
Yes,
when you arrived at the scene?
yes.
And did you see a dog when you arrived at the scene, sir?
I did not know, ma'am.
And item number 12, neither vehicle, white Ferrari, black Cherokee in garage, rear parking, were warm to touch? That's it? Okay. Was that your personal observation, sir, that you're describing there?
No, it was Officer Risky.
Tell us, is that something commonly done, to go and touch the hoods of the vehicles at a crime scene?
You would want to. It could establish some type of a time,
A time for?
the last time the vehicle was used.
Okay. And would that help, what kind of time frame would that help you with? What would be the significance if the car had just been driven?
The last time the vehicle was driven, it could indicate how many hours the vehicle had been at the location after it was driven, or a ballpark.
Mm-hmm. So would that be an indication to you, sir, of when the victim was last alive, another indication to you?
It could.
All right, this is the third page of your notes, sir?
Yes?
Item number 13. At the rear gate on the north side of the residence, is that north? On N/S, is that right?
North side.
Two blood spots at the bottom inside of the gate. Is that what you described as having seen when you in your testimony earlier yesterday?
Yes, it is.
Now, when you say this area might have been where a dog was kept, when you say this area, what do you mean?
The pathway on the north side of the residence, it had gates at both ends, and this might, since the dog was loose, and I already been told that, I just made a note that this could be the area that the dog was kept. In other words, if it didn't live in the home.
Okay. So when you say the north side of the house, you mean that walkway that leads from the front of the residence to the rear alley?
Yes.
Okay. And you were speculating to yourself that might be where the dog was kept?
Yes, ma'am.
And then it says, suspect ran through this area. Suspect possibly bitten by dog, question mark. When you say suspect ran through this area, that was based on what?
Oh, there was the bloody shoe prints going westbound away from the landing and the victims. There was blood drops to the left of those shoe prints. I put that on my notes to make myself remember that a dog was probably in that area, and for myself to wonder if maybe the dog bit the suspect.
Okay. So that was just your speculation then, possibly bitten by the dog?
Yes, ma'am, that's why I put a question mark there.
Okay. No one had told you that, in other words?
No.
Okay. Item number 14, the rear gate, possible blood smudge on upper rail of gate.
Yes.
And is that what you described to it as having seen earlier in your testimony yesterday?
Yes.
And when you say the upper rail of the gate, can you tell us what you mean by that? Describe the area you're talking about.
Yes, the gate's comprised of large 2-inch tubing that appeared to be bent into 90 degrees that create the outside of the gate, and then some type of security mesh and rails in the middle, and that large tubular part of the gate is where the smudge was on top.
Okay. Item number 15. You have rear gate inside deadbolt, turn knob type. And what are you describing there, sir?
The type of, you'd have a conventional knob on the west side of the gate as a locking mechanism, and on the inside of the gate would be just a turn knob. In other words, the key would be used on the exterior, and a turn knob, if you're in the inside, you would not need a key. You just turn a knob, similar to a deadbolt style lock on a house.
Okay. Did Officer Risky tell you in what condition he found that rear gate when he first responded to the crime scene?
I don't recall if he told us. I saw that it was open.
Okay. And when you first walked through that rear gate for the first time with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips, was it standing open, sir, or was it propped open?
It wasn't wide open, but it was open maybe several inches to a foot, I suppose.
So did it have to be pushed in order for you to exit? Did Officer Risky push it open when you exited?
It might have been pushed open with a pen or a flashlight. It wasn't pushed open with the bare hand.
Okay. And then you said here, possible blood smudge and visible fingerprint. Can you describe what you were talking about there? I believe you addressed that earlier in your testimony. Can you describe what it was you saw that caused you to write that?
Yes, on the inside where I described the deadbolt style lock on the inside, or the east side of the gate, On the turn knob, it's brass plated. It looked to be blood smudge on that, leading to what I saw might be a possible fingerprint or a partial fingerprint.
Okay. And so you made a note of that?
Yes.
Okay, item number 16. Bloody paw prints of large dog leading from the residence southbound on the sidewalk approximately 60 feet south of the residence. Can you tell us what you're describing there?
Yes, coming out of the front of the walkway where all the blood was flowing down towards the sidewalk, there was canine paw prints leading southbound on the sidewalk towards Dorothy. And I approximated that the paw prints were visible for 60 feet.
And that was your personal observation, sir?
Yes, it was.
And item 17, you wrote ski mask, one glove by feet of male victim. And again, can you tell us, was that your personal observation?
Yes, it was both directed by Officer Risky and my personal observation.
So that was a combination of Officer Risky's information to you and your own personal observation?
Yes.
And the ski mask that you refer to, sir, I'm missing Jonathan.
Sorry.
This is People's 54 sub 2, Your Honor.
All right.
You described in your notes, sir, item number 17, the ski mask. Based on your observation at that time, was that, let me ask you this, had you gone up to and held it and looked at it when you wrote that note, sir?
No, I did not.
What kind of observation did you have of the object you were describing at the time you wrote that note, item 17?
Well, it appeared to be what I usually describe as a ski cap or a ski mask, and it looked dull cloth, and that's what I concluded it could possibly be. And the glove was fairly obvious that it appeared to be a leather-type glove.
So at the point that you wrote that note, you had not walked up into the crime scene and stepped up to the bush to look at it?
No, I hadn't.
The photograph that we showed you yesterday of you pointing to the items underneath that bush, when was that taken, sir?
I believe that was somewhere around between 7 and 7:15 that morning.
And at that point, sir, had you already been to Rockingham and come back to Bundy?
Yes, ma'am.
So at the point that you wrote the ski mask, how close had you gotten to that item?
No closer than the landing where I observed the two victims from, where the first shoe print.
And that was the closest observation you had at that point?
Yes.
Ms. Clark, you made reference to a photograph where Detective Furhman was pointing. Do you know which exhibit that was? I'm just suggesting we clear that up in the record later.
Yes.
All right. $55.
Is it?
Consensus
Yes,
seems to be
People
55.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The jurors say 55.
The juror said it was 55. Thank you. Okay, so item number 17 is based on your observation of these two items that you've got a look at from the vantage point of the gate with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips, and from the landing with Officer Risky and Detective Phillips.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So you got as far as item number 17, documenting your observation of a ski mask, one glove by the feet of the male victim. Had you completed your notes at that point? We all done?
No.
What happened to interrupt you?
Well, while I was still writing my notes, Detective Roberts entered. He just arrived on scene, and he came into the living room. He was directed by Detective Phillips, and he said, "Can you update me or bring me up to speed?" I did that briefly. I told him, I informed him what I had seen in the house. I took him onto the landing very quickly, pointed out there's a glove, a cap, there's the male victim, the female victim, a menu. I showed him these shoe prints. I walked him back the path. I showed him on the gate the blood. And this time is when Detective Roberts and I both saw the smudge and that possible visible fingerprint.
Okay.
I walked
Now,
him.
Let me interrupt 1 minute. Detective Roberts, who's that?
Detective Roberts is a detective assigned to West LA Homicide, who I normally work with as a partner.
Okay. So he came into the residence. Do you know how he got into the residence?
Yes, he was directed where to go through the garage.
And he came in, and the first time you saw him at that scene was when you were writing notes, sitting on the couch inside the residence at 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, when you saw Detective Roberts, you had been at the scene for how long?
I'd still say that would be 15 minutes when I was writing my notes. The walkthrough with him couldn't have taken more than 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, and after you walked him through the rear gate out to the driveway area, what happened next?
I walked him out through the driveway. I pointed out a blood drop, change. He also looked in the alley for blood drops as we walked that way. He could see none. And he continued back to Dorothy to walk out to the front of the residence and stand with Detective Phillips.
So did you both then walk out there to the front of the location?
No, I returned to the interior of the residence to finish what I was previously doing, writing my notes.
Okay. So where was it that you parted company with Detective Roberts?
In the alley.
And when you went back inside, how did you enter the residence the second time?
The same way, past the Ferrari into that lower door, up the stairs.
And where did you go to?
I went to the same couch. I sat on the edge of the couch.
And what did you do there?
I finished the notes that led up to item 17.
And at item 17, had you completed your notes?
No.
Were you again interrupted?
Yes.
What happened?
Detective Phillips entered from the rear of the residence, and he came in and informed me that robbery homicide would be taking over the investigation.
Okay. And how long had you been sitting on the couch writing when you were interrupted that second time by Detective Phillips?
Maybe another 5 minutes, maybe as much as 10.
And when Detective Phillips informed you that robbery homicide was going to take over the case, what did you do?
I told Ron or Detective Phillips, I said, let me finish these notes, and then I'll turn them over to you.
And what was his response?
He says, okay, finish the notes, and then give them to me, and I'll give them to robbery homicide.
Okay. And did you then complete your notes?
Yes.
Okay. So is item 17, was that meant to be your last entry in your notes at that time?
No,
You didn't complete your notes?
I did not know,
And why not?
because the case was no longer mine.
Okay. What point were you at that when Detective Phillips interrupted you in writing? Had you finished item 17 yet, or were you in the middle?
Well, I don't know. At the end of item 17, I probably would have gone through several other details on some of these items and started setting up who I needed to contact at this scene to be able to complete this crime scene.
But instead of that, you just stopped at that point.
Yes.
And what did you do then?
I went back out through the garage, south on the alley, down Dorothy to Bundy, and remained in the front of the residence, or the street, at the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy, and waited for robbery homicide's arrival.
Okay. So did Detective Phillips come in and inform you robbery homicide was going to take over and then exit again?
Yes, I think he made an indication that he had talked to Chief Franklin, and he thought that it would be best that robbery homicide handled the case.
Okay. And when he informed you of that, sir, how long had you been at the crime scene?
About a half hour.
Did he turn around and leave then, and you sat and finished your notes at that point?
Yes.
For how long before you exited the residence?
Oh, I don't think I probably had just 2 or 3 items left that it was currently on my mind that I needed to put down that I thought were important.
Okay. And so how long in terms of time was that?
Oh, a minute, 2 minutes at the most.
So you remained a minute or 2 minutes after Detective Phillips advised you RHD was taking over the case?
Right, I just put down the thoughts that I had when he walked in, and I stopped.
Okay. And then what did you do? What did you do?
I just went out and waited for robbery homicide on the street.
Okay. When you say you waited on the street, sir, can you tell us where on the street you were waiting?
It was the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy, probably just inside the yellow tape or just outside. I can't remember which it was.
Who were you with at that time?
Detective Phillips, Lieutenant Spangler, the commanding officer of West LA Detectives. I believe a photographer had arrived. I'm not positive on that. And then there's policemen, supervisor, uniformed personnel.
Quite a few officers around by that time, were there?
Yes. I believe Detective Roberts was still there and Detective Nolan was still there.
And were they all standing with you outside?
Yes.
And what did you do when you came back outside and went to the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy?
Nothing.
Now, were you still holding your notes when you came back outside?
I gave them to Detective Phillips immediately.
Okay. And outside at the intersection there?
Yes.
Did you ever go back to your car? The car that you drove in with Detective Phillips?
Yes.
When was that?
Probably sometime shortly thereafter, coming out of the residence.
And for what purpose?
Put my jacket in the car.
So you took your jacket off at that point?
Yes.
Photograph, and avoiding marking who's next in order 105.
105.
Thank you. First, go back to the notes. On page 3 of your notes, we were talking earlier about your observation of a possible blood smudge on the upper rail of the gate, item number 14. Going to show you now People's 105.
Two, please.
Do you recognize the person in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Who's that?
Dennis Fung, a criminalist.
He's pointing to an area on the gate there. Can you tell us, first of all, is that the rear gate at the location of 875 South Bundy?
Yes, it is.
And the area he's pointing to, sir, is that, do you recognize the area he's pointing to?
Yes.
And what area is that?
That's the area I remember that the smudge was, appeared to be a smudge, blood smudge.
No, Your Honor, this is People's 53, I believe, D. It's 53A.
Okay. And
53.
what is that? Do you recognize that location, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is the north walkway leading towards the alley that would be going due west towards that rear gate.
Okay. So is that the rear gate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the position that this photograph is taken from, is that inside the rear gate facing the alley, or is it facing eastbound towards the front of the location?
It's facing the alley from the inside.
People's 53B.
I'm directing your attention now to what appears to be marked as 115 and 116 items, item numbers. Can you tell us if you recognize what's shown?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
Those are the blood drops that I saw at the bottom of the rail.
One, please.
And are those the blood drops that you describe in your notes in item number 13, sir?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. People's next order, Your Honor, People's 106, I'm showing it to counsel.
Two, please.
Yeah, we have a closer-up shot here. So do you see what's shown in People's 106? Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us how.
That appears to be the blood smudge that I saw on the upper portion of that gate from the inside.
And is that the appearance of it, as you recall?
Yes.
One, please.
Now, were you using any kind of flashlight to make the observations that you documented in your notes?
I used that small flashlight that I kept on my belt, yes.
Okay. All right, so you were standing out in the street, I think you indicated the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy, waiting for a robbery homicide to arrive?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you say was with you, sir?
Detective Phillips, I believe Detective Roberts was there, but I don't know how long. Detective Nolan was there, but I don't remember exactly when he left. Lieutenant Spangler. There might have been somebody that arrived from robbery homicide other than the detectives, but I'm not sure. I remember seeing Lieutenant, I believe he was Lieutenant Rogers there at some time, but I'm not sure it was that early.
At that point, sir, were there any police officers guarding the perimeter, that is, guarding the crime scene to prevent people from walking in?
Yes, the crime scene was what we would call sealed off.
Okay. Was there anyone inside the crime scene tape at that point?
No.
Do you recall how many black and white units were there?
I was told there was a black and white unit. The street to the first east-west street to the north of Dorothy at the alley, and I believe one at the intersection of Bundy and that street. I know there was a supervisor and a unit at Dorothy and Bundy. I saw a black and white directly to the rear of 875 South Bundy in the alley, and that's all I can recall.
And how many commanding officers were present at that time?
Lieutenant Spangler was the only commanding officer.
All right. At some point, sir, did you make contact with any detective from robbery homicide?
Yes,
And where were you when that contact was made?
standing in the same location on the street.
Okay. Did you go back into the crime scene, that is up to that gate where you'd gone earlier with Officer Risky, or into the house, or up onto the landing again?
I never returned to that crime scene.
And so you waited outside until robbery homicide came?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you saw Detective Van Adder, that was where?
On the street, same location.
Had you ever met him before?
No, I hadn't.
Was that the first time you met?
Yes.
And what happened at that point?
I was introduced to Detective Van Adder, as was Ron Phillips. Ron Phillips briefed him on what had been seen and done at that point, and Detective Phillips led Detective Van Adder through a crime scene walkthrough.
Okay. Did you go with them?
No, I didn't.
You remained outside?
Yes.
Did you ever go back into the crime scene before going to Rockingham later that morning?
No, I didn't.
So after the point that you left the residence, after completing your notes, you never went back in again until later in the morning after having gone to Rockingham?
Yes, you're correct. I did return at about 7:15, yes.
So you remained out in the intersection, and did you meet anyone else from robbery homicide at that point?
Yes, Detective Tom Lang.
And were you still standing outside at the intersection when he arrived?
Yes, I was.
Where was Detective Phillips or Detective Van Adder?
I believe they had returned. Detective Lang arrived 15, 20 minutes after them, maybe a little longer. They were back out in front of the residence.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what happened when Detective Lang arrived?
Detective Phillips led him through the crime scene walkthrough.
Okay. Did you go with them?
No,
Where did you go?
I remained on the street.
Okay. So then the crime scene was toured by officers before you arrived, sir, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then again by officers after you had been there?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, once RHD Robbery Homicide Division had come in to take over the case, what were your responsibilities?
Well, my responsibilities at that point was to follow Detective Phillips' orders. And he said we were going to remain at the scene and see if we could be assistance, and if not, we will be relieved.
Now, at some point, did you leave the location of 875 South Bundy?
Yes, we did.
Was that after Detective Lang had been given a walkthrough by, was it Detective Phillips?
Yes.
Was it after that point?
Yes, it was.
Can you tell us what led to your departure from Bundy?
I was standing in the group of Detective Phillips, Van Adder, and Lang. Detective Phillips was on the phone, a cellular phone.
And what happened?
While Detective Phillips was on the phone, it seems he interrupted his conversation, and he looked to me and he said, can you take us up to the Simpson or the Rockingham house? And I responded, I went there on a radio call a long time ago, I think so.
And then what?
Well, I wasn't real sure of the numbers or where Rockingham exactly was off of Sunset. I knew it was off Sunset. So I walked all the way back around to the alley where Officer Risky was.
And what did you do there?
Well, I asked Officer Risky, I said, do you know the numbers for the Rockingham location?
And did he respond to you?
He said, yes, and I believe he checked it some way with his partner, and I don't know what they used, if they had already the numbers or they had run something on the computer in the car. He said 360 north. Then I asked Officer Risky, I know it's off Sunset, what's the last major street before you get there? And he responded, Cliffwood, but look real quick because you're going to miss it if you go around the corner too quick.
Okay. Now, you had been at the residence of Mr. Simpson back in 1985, as you described to us yesterday. You recall that?
Yes.
Did you, but you didn't remember where he lived on the early morning hours of June the 13th?
Well, Rockingham stuck in my mind, but that end of the division is pretty large and pretty confusing. And I didn't go up there in that area of the division much at all, in patrol or detectives.
Did you tell anyone, any of the detectives, that you saw that night, well, actually the early morning hours of June the 13th, that you had responded to the house of 360 North Rockingham back in 1985 for a domestic violence call?
I believe the way I described it to Phillips when he asked me was, I went up there a long time ago on a 415 family dispute or a family dispute, and I told him I think I can find it.
Do you recall giving any details about that encounter in 1985, or describing what you had seen to anyone?
No, I don't recall anything at that time.
At that time, in the early morning hours of June the 13th, sir, what was the significance to you of the incident in 1985 that you had been called out on when you were called to respond to Mr. Simpson's residence in 1985?
The significance of that at that point?
Right.
Only that I knew probably how to get to the house.
Okay.
Other than that, I didn't even know why we were going there.
You didn't know why you were going to Rockingham that night?
Well, I didn't know we were at that point. I went back to ask Officer Risky, so I was sure that I gave proper directions.
So did you know that you were going to be going to Rockingham when you got those directions?
No.
What did you think that you were getting them for?
For Detective Lang and Van Adder.
And what did you do with the information that you got from Officer Risky?
I came back to Dorothy and Bundy, and as I approached Detective Phillips, Detectives Lang and Van Adder were getting into their vehicle, or they were in close proximity to, and I believe Detective Lang was the one that said, Ron, Mark, show us the way or lead us up there, or something to that effect. And I got into the vehicle with Detective Phillips, not the same vehicle, but our vehicle. He was driving and I was passenger.
Okay. And so why was it your idea to go to Rockingham?
No.
Do you know at whose request you were going to do that? Go to Rockingham?
Well, I later, when I got into the vehicle with Phillips, I asked what we're going to do, and he said, well, he talked to Commander Bushy, and he wanted an in-person notification.
But at the time you left, you didn't know that.
No.
When did you learn that?
While we were en route.
So then all four of you proceeded to the Rockingham location?
Yes.
And you just said, I think you said you and Detective Phillips were in one car. And who was in the other car?
Detectives Lang and Van Adder.
Was there someone left in charge of the scene?
Oh, yes. There was a uniformed supervisor and a detective supervisor at the scene.
And who was that?
Lieutenant Spangler was the detective CO, and I believe Sergeant Kuhn was still at the scene. I can't be sure on that, but I know there was a sergeant at the scene at Bundy and Dorothy.
And was Lieutenant Spangler still there?
Yes, he was.
Now, how long did you plan to be gone at that point?
I didn't think we'd be gone that long. I think I understood why we were going there after I was told about the notification, which shouldn't take much time at all.
How long?
Well, for Detective Van Adder and Lang, it would probably be, maybe several minutes.
And what was your role going to be, yours and Detective Phillips at Rockingham?
Well, it wasn't verbalized, but I think I realized that we were probably going to assist with any kind of transportation of Mr. Simpson if he was really distraught and he didn't feel like driving. I'm sure we would have given him a ride to the station to reunite him with his children or make some arrangements for the children. We were going to assist robbery homicide, and they had to return to the scene.
What time did you leave Bundy, if you recall?
5 a.m. in the morning.
Okay. Now, did you and Detective Phillips log out at that point when you left? Check in with the officer who had the log?
I don't recall, because when I came back from talking to Officer Risky, it was almost immediate, get in the car, let's go. If Detective Phillips did, he logged us both out, because I personally didn't make contact at that time that I remember.
Okay. So at approximately 5 o'clock, you all drove over to 360 North Rockingham. And how long is that
I believe
right?
it was 360.
360?
360, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And how long did it take you to get there?
5-10 minutes.
Can you recall where you parked when you got to the location?
Yes.
Did you drive up Rockingham from Sunset, drive north on Rockingham?
Yes, we did.
And as you did so, were you looking for the address of 360 North Rockingham?
Yes, well, it's pretty easy off Sunset. You know, everything north of Sunset's 100 and goes up, so it's going to be about 3 of the blocks up in that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So did you have some idea of where to look when you were driving up there?
Yes.
And as you drove up Rockingham, did anything attract your attention?
I noticed a white vehicle parked by the driveway on Rockingham.
Okay. And did you know at the time you saw the white vehicle that that was parked in front of 360 North Rockingham?
Well, I think the residence looked somewhat familiar. I remembered from 85 it was a corner residence, very nice, spacious front yard with a wall. I remembered that with brick. And when I passed it, I think I concluded that this is the address.
Okay. At the time that you first saw that white vehicle, was there anything unusual about it that drew your attention? Or was it just that there was a white car parked there?
No, I was on the passenger side. We passed the vehicle. It was a white four-wheel drive vehicle. I didn't make much of a note of it. I just noticed it.
Okay. Now, where did you park? You didn't park, actually. Where did Ron park?
He turned right on, or eastbound on Ashford, and parked just west of the Ashford gate.
Were you in the lead, your car?
Yes.
And do you know on what side of the Ashford gate that you parked?
He parked on the west side.
I'm sorry, sir?
The west side?
The west side?
Yes.
People's Exhibit number 63.
All right. Do you recognize the location shown here, sir?
I believe in the upper left corner, that is 360 North Rockingham. And I believe I'd be looking at this photo from Rockingham, looking in a southerly direction to Ashford.
So you're looking at the Ashford gate in this photograph, are you?
Yes.
And where, if you can tell us on this photograph, did you park?
There's a bright white dot, it appears, almost dead center in the photograph. That would be approximately a curbside at that area.
Would that be just a little to the right of the person depicted in the photograph that appears to be wearing something red?
Yes.
And if you know, sir, where did Detectives Van Adder and Lang park?
I believe they pulled up directly to the rear of our vehicle.
On Ashford?
Yes.
And when you arrived, what happened next?
All four of us exited the vehicle and stood around the Ashford gate. And I can't remember if it was Van Adder or Lang started ringing the buzzer at the gate.
People's Exhibit number 64.
Did you happen to observe any vehicles when you arrived at the location of 360 North Rockingham and you parked on Ashford? Did you observe any vehicles nearby?
Yes.
What did you see?
There was I believe it was a 280Z or a ZX,
What color?
dark. It might have been a brown, or could even have been dark blue.
I'm going to direct your attention to the photograph now on the screen, sir, and as you face the photograph on the left-hand side, do you recognize the rear half of the vehicle that you saw on Ashford, parked near the Ashford gate when you arrived that night?
That looks like the same location, but I can't really tell what the vehicle is from that photo, but that's where it was.
So you got out of the car. What happened next?
Van Adder and Lang, and quite possibly Detective Phillips and even myself attempted to ring the buzzer.
Okay, so were all four of you there standing together as the buzzer was being rung?
Yes.
When the buzzer was rung, when it was pressed, could you hear it?
I believe I could hear a phone ringing inside, or a ringing.
Noise?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Each time the buzzer was pushed?
I believe so, yes.
Did anyone answer?
No.
Did you happen to observe whether there were any security signs nearby?
I did not, no.
What happened next?
Well, this continued for several minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes. I believe at least three of the four of us were ringing the bell.
Taking turns?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay. So you were all standing there together at that at the call box ringing the bell?
Yes, in that general area.
Okay. And after the 10 or 15 minutes of ringing without receiving an answer, what happened next?
I believe Detective Phillips was on his cellular phone, and Van Adder and Lang remained at the gate, and I walked westbound down Ashford towards the intersection of Rockingham and Ashford.
What were you wearing when you got out of your car after having parked on Ashford?
White shirt, tie, and tan slacks.
Were you wearing a jacket?
No.
Where was it?
In the vehicle.
You left
Police
it there?
Yes.
All right, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, sir. After the 10 or 15 minutes you went, what happened next?
I was just standing at the area of Ashford and Rockingham.
On that corner there?
Yes.
And then what?
I was just looking. I noticed some lights on in the residence that were on the entire time we were there. And I started walking southbound down Rockingham.
When you were at the Ashford gate and with the 3 other detectives and pushing the buzzer, were you able to see any cars in the driveway, inside the gates?
Yes.
And what were you able to see in that regard?
I believe there was a black Saab convertible and some type of a luxury vehicle, a black luxury vehicle.
A big car?
Yes.
And you said you saw lights inside the house?
Yes.
Where inside the house did you see them?
The most westerly upstairs room and the lower right bottom floor room that I later found that was a sitting TV room off the kitchen.
So when you went to the corner of Rockingham and Ashford, sir, were you alone or were you with other detectives?
I was by myself.
Where were the other 3 detectives?
Detective Phillips was standing somewhat in the street using his cellular phone, and Lang and Van Etter were somewhere around the front gate.
The front gate
On Ashford.
on Ashford? Could you see them?
For a while I could, but after I went around the corner from Rockingham, I don't recall seeing them. There's a big fence.
And so you went, at some point, you walked down Rockingham?
Yes.
And why did you do that?
I was just strolling along, looking at the house. Maybe I could see some movement inside, or no really apparent reason. I was just walking. There seemed to be everything under control at the gate.
Everybody else was pushing on the buzzer?
Yes.
Did you feel that they needed your assistance pushing the buzzer?
No.
Okay. So you walked down Rockingham, and what did you do then?
Well, I was walking straight forward towards this white Bronco that was parked northbound on Rockingham on the east curb. And as I was walking towards the vehicle, it seemed that it was parked a little askew, or a little, to me, it looked parked a little unusual for that type of parking.
All right, Ms. Clark. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our court reporter recess for the morning. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you regarding the case. Do not conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. And we will reconvene at 10:35. Detective Furhman, you may step down. You're ordered to return in 15 minutes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We'll stand in recess. All right, counsel, let's have the jury, please. Deputy McNair. Just reviewing those items, nor was the videotape given to me until the conclusion of the break, so I'll...
But we were also talking about the discovery.
All right, so we'll finish the morning session. Ladies and gentlemen, be seated. All right, Detective Furhman, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, good morning again, Detective Furhman. You're reminded you're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Clark, you may resume with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. See, when we last left off, you were walking down towards the Bronco. Is that right, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Two, please. People's 62A.
Do you recognize the vehicle that's being shown to you in this photograph, sir?
Yes, that appears to be the vehicle that I saw parked by the Rockingham gate that morning.
Okay. Was it parked in that location, sir?
Yes.
Now, when you first approached the Bronco, you approached it from what end?
North of the Bronco.
So that you were, as you walked towards it, you were facing the front of the Bronco, is that right?
Yes.
What did you do next?
I was walking towards the Bronco, and I noticed that it was just parked just a little askew, a little strangely. It looked like there was no difficulty in parking there, but yet it looked like it was parked rather haphazardly.
Can you be a little more specific? What do you mean by that?
Well, it appeared that it wasn't pulled to the curb evenly. The rear end was jutting out a little bit, and the tires weren't straight in the front completely.
It was Exhibit 62.
All right, showing you this photograph, sir. If you can tell us whether that appears to be the same Ford Bronco that we just saw in the previous photograph.
It appears to be, yes.
And the position in which you see it in this photograph, does that appear to be the position in which you saw it on June the 13th at approximately 5 a.m.?
Yes, I can't see it from the front, but the rear appears to be about the same position, yes.
Now, the Bronco that you're talking about looking at here, is that the same Bronco that you passed on the way to parking on Ashford?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you noticed that it was parked a little bit askew or a little bit haphazardly, were you looking at it from the front or from the rear?
From the front.
What happened next?
I walked closer to the Bronco, and as I approached to the left of the Bronco, which would be east, on the parkway I saw a broken piece of wood. It was white wood with a freshly exposed piece of wood.
Why did that draw your attention?
Well, it looked out of place. This is a parkway. There was nothing that resembled this. There was no garbage. There was no leaves, limbs, anything. It was just odd, and I did not see at any time any type of wood fence anywhere where I came up Rockingham or anywhere around the premises.
Photograph's been shown to council, and as to be marked People's 106? 107.
People's 106.
Is it
107?
107? Showing you People's 107, sir. Can you tell us, you've just described a wooden stick that you saw near the Bronco shortly after 5 a.m. on June the 13th. Do you recognize what's shown to you in this photograph?
Yes, it appears to be directly east of the right front tire of the Bronco on the parkway.
I'm sorry. Is that the position in which you saw it on the early morning hours of June the 13th?
Yes, I believe so.
And the next photograph also been shown to council, asked it to be marked as People's 108.
Mark 108.
Showing you People's 108, sir. Can you tell us if you recognize that item?
Yes, that appears to be the piece of wood with the exposed wood.
That you saw?
Yes.
Was there any paint on that wood?
Yes, it appeared to be old white paint.
There appears to be some kind of a smudge in the middle of that, a darker color, in the middle of that piece of wood.
Yes.
Based upon your recollection, your observation of that piece of wood, sir, did there appear to be any blood on it?
No.
That smudge that you see there, do you recall seeing that darker spot on the wood when you observed it?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was it?
To me, it looked like the path of a iron nail that had rusted and caused rust to be left on the wood.
Was there any other debris around that piece of wood on the lawn?
I don't believe so, no.
People's Exhibit number 107.
After you made the observation of that piece of wood, what else did you do?
I was still towards the front of the vehicle, and just as I passed the front bumper, I laid the back of my hand towards where the radiator part of the engine would be, directly underneath the hood. It didn't seem to be warm to the touch at all. I walked around the
And
driver's side.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Why'd you do that?
Just to see if the vehicle had been driven recently.
And this was after 5 a.m. now that you're doing this, is that right?
Yes.
Is that what Officer Risky also did at 875 South Bundy with the Ferrari and the Jeep Cherokee when he first arrived around midnight at 875 South Bundy, placed his hand on the cars?
Yes.
Is that something routinely done?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
Then I walked to the right side of the vehicle, the driver's side of the vehicle, and I was just looking at the vehicle as I was walking down the length of it.
Okay. What were you looking for?
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know what I had seen.
So you're just looking at it?
Yes.
And at that point, were you waiting for somebody? What were you doing other than looking at the car? Were you waiting for something?
I was waiting for someone to answer the resident's ringer or Detective Phillips to obtain some information on whereabouts of anyone inside if he could get a phone. I was waiting for them to get someone to answer the door.
And the gate, the Rockingham gate, that the Bronco was parked just north of, was that closed?
Yes, it was.
And the Ashford gate, was that closed?
Yes, it was.
And the other detectives, were they around the Ashford gate?
I believe Van Adder and Lang were in that general area, and Detective Phillips, the last time I saw him, was standing in the street with a cellular phone.
People's Exhibit number 62C. I'm sorry, yeah, C.
Perspective.
People's Exhibit number 62B.
Here we go. All right, you said that you walked on the driver's side of the Bronco. And do you recognize that side in this photograph?
Yes, I do.
What, if anything, did you notice on the driver's side of the Bronco as you looked at it?
Well, as I was walking past the vehicle, I noticed a small spot above the door handle of the driver's side of the vehicle.
Why did that attract your attention?
Well, the vehicle, as you can see, is white, and it stood out somewhat. It was a very clean vehicle.
And were you able, as you looked at the car door, were you able to see clearly what it was at first glance?
No.
What did you do when you noticed it?
I took the small flashlight off my belt, and I used that flashlight to look at the spot.
The same flashlight you used at 875 South Bundy?
Yes, ma'am.
People's Exhibit number 62C.
Where did you carry that flashlight, sir?
On the left side of my duty belt that I wear with my detective outfit, I guess you'd call it.
And your detective outfit consisted of?
Tie, jacket, shirt, slacks.
But you weren't wearing your jacket at that time.
No, I wasn't.
So you just clip that to your belt?
It snaps on the belt, and then the small flashlight just hangs in a small holder.
Now showing you people 62C. Can you tell us if you recognize what is shown in that photograph?
That's the small spot that I saw above the door handle.
What did it look like to you?
Well, at first it just looked like a spot of unknown origin. When I took the flashlight out, I looked at it and it looked reddish brown and translucent qualities to it. and it appeared to be dried blood.
After you saw that, what did you do?
Then I continued to look farther around the vehicle. At one point, I actually got down on my hands and knees and looked in the complete door area, and down on the door sill, I found 3 or 4 small little lines with the same color and qualities that were exhibited above the door handle.
Okay. And those, what area of the door, was that the driver's door, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And what area of the driver's door would that be that you saw those 3 or 4 lines that looked the same color as the smudge shown in People 62C?
As you open the driver's door, the area that the driver's door would open to expose at the bottom would be called the door sill. And that edge that is exposed to the exterior, but still part of the bottom of the sill, it was on that part.
What did you think when you saw all that?
I really didn't know at that time, but I continued to look at the vehicle to see if I could observe anything else.
Did you...
People's Exhibit 62.
Why don't you show us... I'm going to use the laser light. You direct the light. Tell me where you... Tell us where you saw.
On this screen?
Right, if you can. Can you see it, sir, from where you're sitting?
Yes.
All right. Direct the light so
Raise
the
it
jury
up.
can see where you saw those 3 lines you talked about.
You can see the line of the door that outlines the door that would open. Go directly up, now to the left. You could circle any area in there in 6 inches, probably in that area, yes.
And that's where you saw those 3 lines that appeared to be the same color as the spot pointed to by Dennis Fung up here?
Yes.
So you continued to look at the vehicle, did you?
Yes, I did.
Where did you look?
Well, I attempted to look in the vehicle with my flashlight. It wasn't very high powered and there was tinted windows, so that was somewhat difficult. At one point I cupped my flashlight and tried to get the beam to focus as much as I could, and I saw a package in the rear cargo area.
People's Exhibit number 62F.
Do you recognize what you see in this photograph, sir?
Well, I believe that's what I saw in the rear, yes.
And what, if any, identifying information was on those packages, or any of them?
I saw O.J. Simpson on the address, or O.J. Simpson Enterprises, and attention Kathy.
And did that cause you to form some opinion about who owned the car, sir?
Well, it seemed to be Mr. Simpson's or someone that worked for him.
What else did you see in the rear car? Never mind, strike that. All right. After you made those observations of the packages in the rear cargo area, did you notice anything else in the rear cargo area?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
There was a shovel that was approximately 5 feet long. It was, I can't remember if it was a pointed or a flat nose shovel, but it was turned point down, in other words, the cutting edge down. And there was a large piece of heavy gauge plastic that was tucked in a side cargo area in the rear part of the vehicle.
Can you see anything in this photograph that depicts what you just described?
Yes, I do.
And where's that?
In the left corner of this photograph, I see the shovel that I'm describing.
And where did you see the plastic, sir?
There's a pocket area to the on the passenger side of the vehicle.
In the rear cargo area?
In the rear cargo area, and it was folded, and it was tucked in that area.
Tucked in the pocket.
It was a pocket or a netting, I'm not sure which it was. Seemed to be held there.
the photograph that's already been shown to council. I'd ask it be People's 109.
All right, people 109, photograph.
Showing you People's 109, sir. Do you recognize what's shown in this photograph?
Yes, that is the shovel I described.
Is that the position in which you saw it, sir, when you looked through the rear cargo window of the Bronco on the early morning hours of June the 13th?
Yes, it is.
After you made those observations, sir, what did you do next?
I went back towards Ashford, and I didn't want to yell to the other detectives, but I wanted to talk to them about some of the observations I made.
And who did you contact?
I saw Detective Lang up towards the intersection of Ashford and Rockingham, and I believe I walked that area, and I didn't get real close, but I got close enough where I didn't have to use an elevated voice to communicate. And I got Detective Van Adder and Lang to come down to the Bronco.
Now, when you made contact with Detective Lang, where was he?
I think he was on Ashford and Rockingham intersection, more inboard of Rockingham on Ashford, but I could visibly see him as I was walking towards that direction.
And Detective Van Adder, where was he when you made contact with him?
I don't recall seeing him initially when I turned around. I believe he was back towards the gate.
So you contacted Detective Lang first at the corner of Ashford and Rockingham?
I believe so, yes.
And after you told him what you'd seen, what did you do next?
Well, I believe I said I think I saw something on the Bronco, and Van Adder and Lang and I both walked down there at the same time.
So you all walked down, three of you together?
Yes.
And what did you do then?
I showed them the observations first. As we were walking, I described the way the Bronco first kind of got my attention. Then I showed them the piece of wood, and then the spot that I thought was blood, the 4 small marks that I thought was blood. I described what was in the vehicle and tried to use my flashlight and give them the ability to see those items.
And what happened next?
At some point, Detective Phillips walked down the street and joined us.
Towards you?
Yes, and I'm not sure how long he stayed there. I remember Detective Van Adder said, let's run the vehicle. In other words, run a DMV on the vehicle.
And what does that mean, sir, when you say run the DMV?
Use the radio to run a Department of Motor Vehicles check on the license plate to the registered owner.
Whose radio did you use?
I had a radio. I'm not sure if it was taken from our vehicle or robbery homicides, but we had a Rover.
And did you do that? Run the DMV, that is?
Yes, I did.
What did it come back to?
Hertz Rent-A-Car?
What, if anything, did that tell you in terms of the ownership of the car?
It belonged to Hertz Rent-A-Car.
Did that give you any further information concerning the possibility that it was the defendant's vehicle?
Well, I had known that he had worked for Hertz Rent-A-Car only from commercials, but the package in the rear coupled with the DMV, I concluded that at that time.
That he was the owner?
That he could be the owner or his corporation, yes.
Did you give that information to either Detective Van Adder or Detective Lang?
Yes, I did.
What happened next?
Well, at that point, Detective Lang walked back up towards Ashford and Rockingham, and I believe eventually to the front gate on Ashford. And Detective Van Adder and I stood for a moment several feet in front of the Bronco, and we discussed just exactly what we had observed and what impact it would have on what we were attempting to do.
And what were you attempting to do?
Well, we were there to make notification, but we were fairly unsuccessful at raising anyone in the home.
And what were
Well-
you going to do about that?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't doing anything. I was not in charge, but as far as the observations on the Bronco, I think Detective Van Adder and I both vocalized our concern that coming from the scene of a double homicide, and now we're at this location with a vehicle parked at this location with what we believe is blood, and we believe it belonged to Mr. Simpson.
Did you attempt to get any further information, or to your knowledge, was further information obtained from West Tech about whether you should expect to find someone in the residence?
Well, I believe that we eventually, or Detective Phillips eventually got the resident's phone number inside the residence, which was unsuccessful to raise anybody.
So he had called into the residence, had he?
Yes, I don't know if he acquired that from West Tech or the watch commander, but
Now, did you have any contact with the West Tech unit?
there was a West Tech unit that was traveling northbound on Rockingham that parked his vehicle on Rockingham and exited that vehicle and walked towards me.
And was that... Can you tell us, or had you seen any kind of a West Tech sign on any part of the property outside of either the Ashford or the Rockingham gate?
I didn't notice any sign, no.
What is West Tech?
West Tech's a private security firm an armed security firm that usually installs alarms, and they have response units that can investigate anything from a panic alarm to a possible burglar to trespassing.
And you made contact with someone from West Tech that night?
Yes.
That early morning?
Yes.
Did you get some information from that person?
Yes, I did.
And what information was that?
As the West Tech sergeant was passing myself, I stopped him and I said, is there anybody that's supposed to be at home now? And he responded that, well, there's a live-in maid that's supposed to be there 24 hours a day.
And what did you do with that information?
Well, I directly went back to Detective Van Adder and Lang's location by the Ashford gate and informed him of that situation, or that information.
And what time was it by that time? At that point when you went to tell Detective Van Adder that you'd learned a maid was supposed to be there all the time, if you recall?
Well, I think it had to be 30 or 40 minutes since we'd been there. It was probably 5:45, 10 to 6.
What happened next?
At this point, there was more discussion about exactly what was going on at the location, and our concern that there could be another victim or some type of a situation here that we didn't quite understand.
You'd been there, okay, it was about 5:45 or 10 to 6 at that point?
Yes.
You indicated, I believe, that you left, you and Detective Phillips left Bundy at about 5 a.m., is that right?
Yes.
And that it took about 5 to 10 minutes to get to 360 North Rockingham.
Yes.
So at the very latest, you would have gotten there at about 10 after 5?
Yes.
So you, the four of you, were outside trying to reach someone inside the house from about 10 after 5 till at least 5:45 or 10 to 6?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so you indicated at that point, after you'd been there for approximately 35 to 40 minutes, you and Detective Lang, or who was talking?
Detective Van Adder and I were speaking in front of the Bronco initially, and are you talking about that location or by the Ashford gate?
You tell me. At about 5:45 or 5:50, where were you?
We were at the Ashford Gate, three of us, and I believe Detective Phillips was still on the cellular phone.
Okay. And what were you talking about?
Well, what we've been confronted with, we had some small pieces of evidence that would indicate that quite possibly somebody had left the Bundy scene and come to the Rockingham location.
So, who was deciding what to do? Who was...
Detective Van Etter was doing most of the talking. We had previously discussed our concerns with another possible victim or a kidnap-type robbery, murder-suicide. We had no idea exactly what we were confronted with at that point.
Who was in charge there at 360 North Rockingham?
I would have to say Detective Van Etter.
Were you the most junior detective there, sir?
The most...
Junior detective
Yes,
there?
I was. Yes.
And the youngest, too?
Yes.
What happened next?
At some point, the conclusion was made by Detective Van Etter that we would have to find a way to get into the compound at 360 North Rockingham.
What happened next?
There was a question how we're going to do this, and I suggested, do you want me to go over the wall?
You were the most junior detective, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you in the best physical shape of the 4 detectives there?
Well, I don't... kind of put me on the spot, but I think I was the tallest detective.
Okay. You were certainly the youngest.
I was the youngest, yes.
What were you wearing at that time?
White shirt, tie, slacks,
No jacket?
no jacket.
All right. So you asked Detective Van Etter if he wanted you to go over the wall.
I think I made the statement, and then he just said, okay.
So that decision was up to him to make, is that right?
Yes.
And then what happened?
I jumped the wall just to the left or east of the Ashford Gate, landed on the other side, came around and released the hydraulic arm to the gate on Ashford and let the other detectives into the location.
And then what happened next?
I believe Detective Phillips and Van Etter were somewhat ahead walking, and then Detective Lang and then myself trailing, and Detective Van Etter and Detective Phillips went to the front door.
Exhibit number 64.
All right. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That's the Ashford Gate at 360 North Rockingham.
Do you see an animal on just to the inside of the gate?
Yes.
Okay. Does that appear to be a dog?
Yes, it is.
Now, can you see the front door area from the vantage point of this photograph?
Well, I know where the front door is, but it's very difficult to see from this photograph.
Can you, if you can see the screen, please direct the pointer to the area where where the front door is.
Go straight up, and then to the left, and then a little higher. Right in that area, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is that where you all walked to?
Yes.
What happened next?
You want to describe that for the record?
I'm sorry, that's right. Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, I'm pointing to an area that appears to be pretty much the middle of the photograph, just under the windows at the front of the house that are depicted, that you can see in this photograph, directly straight down from there.
Thank you.
What happened? You all went to that front door area, and then what happened?
I was standing to the rear of the group, and I'm not sure if Van Adder or Phillips were knocking, but for a couple minutes we stood there and knocked at the front door and received no response.
Okay. So was it all four of you that were standing at the front door there together?
Yes.
Did you all walk over to the front door together?
Yes.
Right. And did anyone answer the door?
No.
How long did, who did the knocking, do you remember?
It was Phillips or Van Adder. I tend to think it was Phillips, but I can't be absolutely sure.
Okay. And you just stood with them?
I stood behind several feet,
What were you doing?
just standing, waiting for somebody to answer the door.
Did anyone answer the door?
No.
What happened next?
Van Adder and Phillips left the front door area, and we all turned, and Phillips and Van Adder started walking back towards the front gate and then entered a walkway that went alongside of the house on the north side of the residence.
Did you see any animals?
Yes.
And when did you do that?
Right about when we turned, I believe when we turned to walk in that path.
And that path, is it parallel to Ashford or Rockingham? The path?
I'm sorry?
The path that you took, is it parallel to Ashford or Rockingham?
It's parallel to Ashford.
Yeah, this is good, Mark. This is an old one.
All right. Make sure it's stable.
Yeah.
Exhibit is this?
This is Pete.
Can you just turn it around? You're welcome.
All right, if you would, Detective Furhman, would you step down? Using the pointer, if you would. Please show us the path that you took with Detectives Phillips, Van Adder, and Lang after you knocked on the front door and got no response. When I say you, I mean they, all of you.
This area that's marked as entrance, that is the front door area. We turned around and walked northbound until we had come to this path that is beige in color on this chart, and it somewhat in kind of an S circles around to the rear of the residence. It continues around and starts to go southbound up some stairs into a patio area next to the pool.
And I think you indicated that when you first turned onto that walkway, you saw a dog.
Yes, I believe it was, we might have came out of the pathway area, but it appears to be right where the pathway meets the driveway, somewhere around there.
And for the record, the witness was indicating the southern point of the intersection of the pathway and the driveway. And what did the dog look like?
Black, long-haired, I couldn't tell the breed. It looked maybe like some kind of a mix or a shepherd-type dog. It's all black.
So the four of you were walking onto the walkway when the dog approached?
Yes.
Did it bark?
No.
What did it do?
Well, we stopped because we thought we were about to be bit. And then the dog didn't do anything, so we kind of walked by, and he just allowed us to.
And you didn't bark? You didn't bite?
He didn't bark at all.
What did the dog do as you proceeded down the walkway?
I don't know, when he walked by, that was fine with me, and we continued.
That was fine with you?
It was fine with me.
All right. So did the four of you all walk together on that walkway?
Pretty much, I believe, yes. I was in the rear.
Okay. And what were you doing as you were walking on the walkway with the other three detectives?
I was doing nothing, I was just following.
And when you walked through the rear yard area, were you searching or looking around? What were you doing?
I was really doing nothing, I was just following these detectives that were walking along this pathway.
Okay. What did you see?
I saw the lawn and the pathway, and walking into the pool area, I just saw the pool area, nothing unusual.
What happened next?
We walked onto the patio area. I think Phillips and Van Adder probably slowed somewhat and looked around, and I didn't see anybody verbalize, but I kind of assumed that someone saw something down in this area that they wanted to look at or knock on, or I don't know. They walked past the step area, down onto this area by the pool, and down towards this room that is denoted on this chart by Kaelin's room.
Detective Furhman, if you want to step over to the side a little bit, I don't know if the jurors on the end can see where you're pointing to, and show them the area you've just indicated that you went to.
We walked down this area onto this area here. Recall that there was a little pause, and then continuing down to this patio area, and this is where Detective Phillips approached this doorway of what is described here as Kaelin's room.
And what were you doing? Were you in the front? Were you in the rear? Where were you in relationship to the other three detectives?
Well, I was to the rear, and I believe I was still up either on these stairs or standing up on this area here.
So were you following them?
Yes.
And when you got to the area marked, when the four of you got to the area marked Kaelin's room, what happened next?
I saw Detective Phillips look towards the door, and he went up to it, and I think about at the same time he was about to knock. I could tell it was a glass pane door, and there was wood louvers on the inside, and some of them were open. Detective Phillips he saw something, he turned back and said, there's a guy on the bed, or there's someone lying on the bed, something like that. And he knocked on the door, and then shortly thereafter someone came to the door.
Can you describe the person that came to the door?
Male white, 5'9", 5'10", long brown hair. He looked like he was just woken up. He might have had sweatpants on or some type of a pajama.
Detective Furhman, could you
Yeah.
keep your voice up, please?
Why don't
Sorry.
you go ahead, resume your seat, and we'll come back to that. Resume your seat, then we're going to need the board again, so. All right, the person that answered the door, do you now know who that is, sir?
Yes.
Who's that?
Kato Kaelin?
And after he answered the door, did someone speak to him?
Yes, Detective Phillips.
And did you hear what Detective Phillips said to him?
I was standing behind and above, and I heard him ask Mr. Kaelin if he knew if Mr. Simpson was in the house. And then I'm not sure if it was Phillips or one of the other detectives making a comment that there might be some sort of an emergency we need to know, or something to that effect.
And what happened next?
I heard Mr. Kaelin direct all of us to Mr. Simpson's daughter's room, which he pointed east down that walkway along the bungalows and said something like Mr. Simpson's daughter Arnell's room is down this way, and I think he pointed or directed them down that way.
Now, do you see the area that he pointed to on this exhibit marked as People's 66?
Yes, I do.
Can you please step down, sir, and point it out to the jury?
This, right directly in front of what's described as Kaelin's room, there's a walkway. This walkway, he pointed them down towards this area, which was Arnell's room.
And when he directed all of you to Arnell's room, he pointed that out, what happened next?
Detective Phillips and Van Adder and Lang walked in that direction.
And what did you do?
Well, I came down these steps and I stayed with Mr. Kaelin.
Okay, and what happened at that point?
I don't know what happened when they walked down to talk to Arnell Simpson. I stayed with Mr. Kaelin, and he was standing somewhat in the doorway, and I asked if I could come in, and he said yes.
Okay. Why don't you take your seat? When you made your first contact with Mr. Kaelin, were you outside or inside his room?
I believe I was outside, standing on the walkway outside the doors.
And where was he?
He was just inside the open door.
How did he look to you?
Like he had just woken up. Mussed hair. I noticed he had bloodshot eyes. They were kind of glassy. He had a T-shirt, some type of loose-fitting pants on. Could have been sweatpants. A little disoriented.
What was your opinion of his condition when you first made contact with him?
Well, I really didn't know if I really had formed an opinion. I did ask him if he'd been drinking, and I'm pretty sure he responded that he doesn't even drink.
And based on your observations of him, sir, what did you do?
I asked him if I could just do a short test on him just to make sure that he wasn't under the influence.
And what kind of test is it that you gave him?
It's called a nystagmus test.
And what is that?
It's a test that you would use to determine if somebody was under the influence or possibly under the influence of a depressant, one being alcohol.
Is that something that you've given to someone before?
Yes.
In what situation?
Situations maybe on a traffic stop, thinking that there's a possibility that I might be under the influence of alcohol, or a narcotics location to eliminate a depressant or alcohol from your observations.
And how is that test given?
Well, you use usually a pencil or a pen. You hold it vertical foot to 15, 16 inches in front of the person's face. You tell them to concentrate usually on the forehead right between your eyes, and to not move their head, but follow the pen as you move it from right to left with your eyes.
Can you show us? Do you have a pen?
Yes.
Do you have it?
No.
Here, back to me. Okay, show us.
I put the pin approximately this far away from the front of the person's face that is going to submit to the test, and then I would instruct them, I being the person on the other side of this pin, to do not move your head, and I'll demonstrate this without being the person that's being given the test. I would concentrate in that person's head, and as I move the pin, I would want to move my eye, not my head. If there is something indicative of a depressant, the eye would bounce.
Okay.
All right, indicating a pen distance about 15 inches from the face.
Thank you, Ronald. And you administered that test to Mr. Kaelin, did you?
Yes.
And what did you observe?
There was no bounce to his eyes.
What did you do next?
I engaged Mr. Kaelin in conversation while I believe one of the first things I asked him was, do you mind if I look around? He replied, no.
Now, where were the other 3 detectives at this point?
They were directed to Arnell's room, and I can only assume they were east of my location at that part of the bungalows.
Did you, at any point, enter Mr. Kaelin's room?
Yes.
Did you ask his permission to do so?
Yes.
And did he let you?
Yes, he did.
What happened next?
That is when I asked him if I could look around. And I asked if he would mind if I looked around. He said no. And I looked into the bathroom, into the shower area. I looked into some tall closets on the east wall. And then I came back and engaged him in conversation once again.
What were you looking for?
Oh, I was looking at the places that someone could secrete themselves, hide, or someone could put a human-sized object.
So you're looking for a person, possibly?
Yes.
A victim, or what?
Well, I didn't know, but I didn't particularly care to stand. I didn't know who Mr. Kaelin was, and just for the simple fact of officer safety, I wanted to get permission to at least look at the places that someone could at least hide.
Mm-hmm. What happened next?
I asked Mr. Kaelin if the white Bronco in front, who it belongs to, and he said it was OJ's. And I asked him if he drove it last night, but I believe before he answered that, I think I asked him another question.
And what was that?
If anything unusual happened last night.
Now, did you tell him about the crime scene you'd just come from at 875 South Bundy?
No, I told him nothing about Bundy or anything else about any observations.
Why is that?
I didn't know who Mr. Kaelin was.
And what difference did that make?
Well, you would never discuss anything about a case except for with the detectives until you know exactly who is involved in the case or what information they might be able to elicit.
Okay. Kind of like standard behavior?
Yes.
Routine thing. So when you asked him, did anything unusual happen the night before, what was his response?
He said about 10:45 p.m. the previous night. I believe he said he was talking on the phone. He said he heard a crash or a thump on his wall. He thought there was going to be an earthquake, and his picture shook.
And did he point out to you the picture or the area on the wall where he heard that crash?
Yes.
Where did he point to?
He pointed to a picture towards the right side of his bed, which would be the west side of his bed. His bed was, the head was on the south wall, and the foot was at the north end of the room. The
Your Honor, the photograph's going to be shown now. I'd ask to be marked Peoples next in order of 109,
All right.
110.
Okay.
All right, do you recognize what's shown in this photograph, sir?
I believe this is Cato's room, but there's been items removed from the room.
So it looks a little different than the way you saw it on June the 13th of 1994?
Yes.
Now, have I sat down and shown you any photographs?
No.
So is this the first time you've seen this photograph, sir?
Yes, it is.
And how is it different? How is the condition of this room different than what you observed on June the 13th?
This chair that's in the left upper corner, I don't recall that chair being there, that French provincial-looking chair. And I don't know what that object is directly to the left of that chair, but I recall a dresser, a tall man's bureau to be there. The air conditioner to the left of the bed was in that location. I can't tell if the picture that was on the wall is out of the focus of this, or out of the picture, or if it had been removed.
Okay. The area on the wall that he pointed to as where he felt that crashing sound came from, can you see that in the photograph here?
Well, the way he described it was between the air conditioner and the picture that was to the right of the air conditioner, which was somewhere above the bed to the right.
Okay. If you would, please, sir, if you can see the screen.